Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today, we're going to be talking about the newest album from Poppy called Poppy.Computer. You know, it's very tempting for me to, as a YouTuber, to start this entire review with something about Poppy spoof, the washed out aesthetic, the slightly off-kilter delivery, full of fragmented non sequiturs, internet sound bites and memes, the sort of layered satire of pop stars in the age of internet culture directed by Titanic Sinclair, which has blown up into something that I would need the next hour to fully deconstruct and explain to the average bystander. To reveal more would be to strip away some of the charm of the original videos, which you should all go watch because they really are something. But suffice to say, for the most part, I'm actually a fan of Poppy as an internet personality, at least. But I'm not reviewing an internet personality or a meme. I've got enough trouble keeping reviews monetized as it is. I'm talking about the music, of which Poppy has touched on since the very beginning of her channel, with covers and eventually some original songs that would leverage some of the satire against a Technicolor backdrop. And while I've always liked her pop music, I've had my concern that her online persona would kind of overshadow some of her albums, that she wouldn't quite be able to capture the subtle twist and potency that came through in the best of her videos. Now, if you have to wonder if she'd even bothered even try in some cases. Around this time last year, she released the ambient project 336 Music to Sleep To, and despite certain eerier textures, it was far more abstract than her usual pop songs. But it also felt like more of an experimental digression, not the blur of K-pop, dance punk, and electronic synth pop that I expected we would get on her debut, let's call it that. So, okay, what'd I find with Poppy.Computer? Well, pretty much exactly what I expected, as Poppy.Computer is a sort of chiptune-infused, bouncy record that's short and sugary enough to satisfy fans with comfortable material, while also delving a little bit deeper into some themes that haven't quite been explored as thoroughly in some of her videos, and that was definitely welcome. And while I'm not quite certain it's everything that I would personally want out of a Poppy album, we'll get into this a fair bit more later, as an opening salvo to establish her to a larger audience, I'm actually very satisfied this. This is a pretty damn good project. Of course, to do all this effectively, we need to establish what makes Poppy's satire and commentary actually work. Cause of a lot of acts, they've swallowed their own tail pretty quickly chasing down this path and have made records that have turned out pretty badly. Hell, look, with one single, Look What You Made Me Do by Taylor Swift managed to fumble spectacularly what Poppy handles with a lot more grace and a much more convincing edge. See, without giving too much away from the plot of the videos, Poppy actually seems to kind of enjoy playing the prefabricated pop icon and what it represents in the age of internet fandom, with framing that has taken enough steps back to show plainly exactly all of what that entails. So of course there is a sheen of artifice to everything around Poppy, which with her light cooing, slightly off-kilter vocal delivery, she seems to know and subtly emphasize, but that sheen can be very easily compromised. And it also encompasses any communication both to and from her. And in the era of slipping human connection and the blurring of online and real-life identity, only further intensified by how we seek validation through online modes of communication, it's no surprise that Poppy opens up the album on I'm Poppy by getting the audience engaged to her world and then surrendering unique identity along the way by having them repeat on the chorus, I'm Poppy. It's also no surprise that the most panicked song with the jagged guitar chords comes on microphone with a great beat switch up there, where she can't find the titular device in order to speak to that audience. It's why the fluttery J-pop touches of Moshi Moshi could easily imply a deeper connection, but it all feels all too fleeting. And it's how on Let's Make a Video, Poppy acknowledges that asserting individual identity only requires the slightest shift for her outside of a plasticized norm, which is why, at least for the first few songs, the tones, they're not that far removed from what you might hear on modern pop radio. Skittering trap hi-hats, keening 80s inspired synth grooves that split between glossy and eerie with just enough of a sharper groove to remind me a lot of Grimes' Art Angels, in which this record does borrow a fair amount. But where this project gets a little bit more interesting comes in Poppy's engagement with others, in both highlighting the vapidity of some of those connections and how they can be incredibly lucrative for Poppy as a vessel for those messages that she only needs to parrot, not understand. band, but also how they can add a sheen of unreality to pretty much everything. Bleach Blonde Baby, it flat out acknowledges that she only needs to look perfect, her only valued skill in this incredibly commercialized world. But the more intriguing line in the song is, "You don't even know what to do with me." The truth is that when people meet an idealized figure, romantic or just a fan of otherwise, she's treated as more of a prize to be won, an object than a person with which to actually engage. And outside of her slightly lisping, multi-tracking on the hook, I really like that song, but what gets even more intriguing is when Poppy aims to get a little darker, as the back half of this album certainly does. Sure, we get the garish, blocky Technicolor pop grooves of Fuzzy and Computer Boy, but a song like My Style is more chilling, with eerie layers of synth piling in to intensify the mannequin Charlotte's voice, saying how Poppy can be very much a tool and a projection of whatever you want her to be. And yet Poppy herself highlights that symbiotic push and pull of that on Interweb. In a world that feels increasingly smaller because we're all connected, we have so much knowledge, she's now one who's pulling at least more strings, is one of the few darker moments on this album instrumentally. And if I was to criticize the blocky but effective chiptune grooves of this record, it'd be that I could probably aim to pick up a little bit more of the massive, ethereal but unnerving ambient tones that drove her previous project and sit behind a lot of her videos. If only to suddenly crank up some of the existential horror and further distinguish her tones from a sound that, again, Grimes arguably executed more effectively, if less consistently, on Art Angels. Hell, it's one reason that I actually like the slightly more atonal side of Software Upgrade, dumping the anonymous interchangeable masses with the satisfaction for both Poppy and that audience feels increasingly flimsy. Hell, it'd be easy to expect Poppy just to break away from the system altogether, but then the final track, Pop Music, actually takes a different tactic, a primarily acoustic, glittery ballad where she sings pop music's egalitarian praises for sounds that can speak across the entire human experience. And sure, she knows that it's constructed and that chasing it is shamelessly commercial, but it has the potential at its best to be transcendent and speak to everyone, and there is a certain value and magic to that. Again, this is where the more distant framing is absolutely essential, showing just both enough to damn pop, but also to praise it. And I actually really respect that. And at the end of the day, I'm happy that Poppy made this album. It's a bit of an odd and garish listen for sure, and there are parts I definitely feel are underwritten, or that Poppy could have used some thicker backing vocals for some of her harmonies, or a shade more darkness or bombast. Her voice still comes across a little bit thin, but that can come on that sophomore project, which I hope we get. As it is, light 8 out of 10 for me, and a recommendation, especially if you're already a fan of the videos. Otherwise, well, if you're looking for an ideal starting point, this is a quick, relentlessly catchy, and plenty intriguing listen. Probably one of the best sorts of this sort of synth pop record. I definitely see you, Poppy. And my message for you, well, you already know, don't you? So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Yes, you definitely want to check this out. Link to buys in the description below. I also got the poll up there. I'm curious for more die-hard Poppy fans, and I know you're out there, where you guys fall on the record, whether or not you thought it was a little bit too light, as I did. Beyond that, I still think it's pretty great, though. I did definitely enjoy this. But if you guys want to get involved in my scheduling process, link to my Patreon is right over there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once a week for the higher tier contributors, you get to add records, movies, or even a top 10 list to that schedule. And I got a top 10 list coming in about 30K, so only a couple days now. I'm looking forward to it. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.